So I'm going to stop screen sharing, and you're going to walk us through some of the cool things about how you can enhance images in Mylio. Then I'll show our new external editing workflow, and then we'll show a little bit about how Mylio and Lightroom can work together for those who like to use Adobe's editing tools, and we'll show that synchronization. So I'm going to get out of the way, Angela, and why don't you take about 6-7 minutes and show us a couple of the cool things we could do to enhance an image.
Absolutely. Well, this is my wheelhouse. This is what I really love, is the creative editing. And Mylio has some really good tools in it. So if you don't want to jump out to other applications, you can edit from within Mylio, and you can do this on any of your devices. Mylio's editing is non-destructive, meaning your raw image, your original image, JPEG or whatnot, is untouched, and those edits are saved in the Mylio catalog. And those changes are visible across all of your devices. So I can make a change on one image on my iPad, and it's going to show up on my computer and my phone. I can make a change on my computer, and it's going to show up on my phone and my iPad. So that's all a lot of fun and really cool. So let's go over to albums. And I've selected a few images that I think might be fun to work on and edit. So let's go to, let's see here, under editing. All right, here we go. So here's a few images from our sample library. They're gorgeous photos, and I think we could edit them a little bit and make them look even better. So let's start with this one here. I'm going to go to the Edit tab and just reset this. And you can see that it's very, very crooked. So the first thing I want to do is grab our 90-degree rotation, rotate that left, and that gets us a little closer to where we want to be. I can then go to the Crop tool and use the slider at the bottom to straighten this out and level out that horizon. All right, so just right about there, that looks good. And I'm using the lines on the screen to correspond with that horizon line. So you can get that pretty close.
And if you had to deliver to a particular thing, like maybe a computer screen, or you wanted to make a 5x7 print, if you click on that word aspect there, you'll see presets to make it easy.
Definitely. So you can crop to different aspects. If you want to go to a square crop, for instance, or change to a different size for a specific print size, you can do that. You can even enter a custom aspect ratio, or I could change this from a horizontal print to a vertical. And those are all right there at your fingertips. Also, if you need to flip the image side to side, you can do that. If you want to put it up, top to bottom, you can do some fun things like that. And your rotate controls are also up here in the upper right. But this looks pretty good to me right now, so I'll click done. And then we're going to go into our editing tools. So I like to work kind of top to bottom in a list like this. And if you've been in image editing before, a lot of these controls are going to look similar to what you see in other apps. You have your exposure, your highlights, shadows, your color controls, and so forth. I'm going to go ahead and open up the histogram at the top. And this gives me a graphical representation of the different tones in my image. And the darker tones are going to be here towards the left and the brighter tones to the right. And what that's showing me is I have a little bit of room to where I can open this up. There's a lot of empty space here that I can use to give this image a little bit more impact and depth. For instance, if I grab the exposure slider and move this to the right, you'll see how that's opening up this area here and spreading those tones out along the spectrum. It also moved those darkest tones away from the left and moved some of those brighter ones over here closer to the right. Now we have something called clipping warnings. If you hit the J key on your keyboard, it'll light up certain areas of the screen. And what this is doing is these areas in blue mean I've lost detail in the darkest areas. And that's where we're hitting on the very left side of the histogram here. If I had areas that were too bright, so just to demonstrate, I can take this exposure up and you can see that now these red areas have lost detail in the highlights. So it's something to pay attention to. It's not an absolute rule, but you want to make sure that the areas of your image that are the most important and the most interesting have as much detail as possible. So I'm going to bring this back down.
This is particularly true if you're going to be printing them, because the blacks will become really muddy and the bright areas have no detail at all and they look awful, but even on screen, they won't look very good.
Exactly. All right, so from here, what I'm going to do, we still have a lot of blocked up shadows down here at the bottom, those blue areas. So I'm going to grab the shadow slider and move that to the right to brighten up those shadows. And that's bringing back some of the detail in those darkest areas. I can also do the same thing with the black slider, but you want to be a little bit more gentle with this because this can tend to make the image look a little bit flat, which tends to make it look less interesting. For now, I'm going to touch the J key on my keyboard again to turn off that clipping warning. And already we've made some pretty significant changes to this photo. We can do the before and the after. And I think this is looking better, but I think the sky is a little bit too bright. So I'm going to grab the highlights and pull the highlights down. And I'm also going to pull the whites down, and that's going to darken up those brightest areas and give it a little bit more interest up here in the sky. I'm also a big fan of clarity, and what this does is it enhances the mid-tone contrast, and it gives the impression of additional detail. So I like to pull that up to the right, and that's going to make those clouds a little bit more pronounced, give us a little bit more detail here in these rocks in the foreground, and overall improve the image. Now we can scroll down and take a look at our color. Vibrance and saturation are going to add or subtract color. The difference is that Vibrance usually hits your image up with a lighter touch. So it's going to target the most or least saturated areas of the picture. When you move it to the right to add color, it's going to add color to the less saturated areas. So it's a little bit lighter touch and usually more pleasant. Saturation is going to target every pixel in the image. So regardless of how saturated or unsaturated that area is, it's just going to add more saturation. So it's easy to go overboard with saturation, and I tend to use Vibrance a lot more often in my own editing. I did jump over here at the top. We have our white balance, and this has to do with the color of the light. And you'll notice on certain days, depending on whether it's sunny or it's cloudy, the light around you has different characteristics. So on a sunny day, then things tend to look warmer or more yellow. You're going to see more of that yellow light reflected off things, and it's going to give a warmer look to the image. Conversely, on a cold day, on a foggy day or overcast, the tones are going to be a lot more blue around you. And what we have here in this image, you can see it's very cloudy and there's a lot of blues in this image. If we want to warm it up, we can grab this temperature slider and move that to the right and add a little bit of different light characteristic to this image. And I think that actually looks really pretty. It kind of emphasizes the light that's hitting the mountains here across the lake and makes the image overall look better. Now, a few other options that we have here at the bottom is we have sharpening. A lot of times raw images straight out of the camera need a little bit of extra sharpness. If you shoot in JPEG, which means your camera does the processing for you, your camera is already adding some sharpening. But raw images don't have any sharpening added, so it's up to you to add a little bit of sharpening. You want to be careful with it, don't go too far, but what it does is add a little bit of contrast around those edges to give the impression of sharpness and edge contrast.
And this has nothing to do with the picture being out of focus, folks.
Correct.
It's that the images become compressed by the camera because there's so much data. And so this just refines the transition at the edges and adds visual clarity so that it looks really sharp. And so that's why you would add that in. And then a little bit of noise reduction if you're shooting in lower light.
Exactly. If we zoom in on this image, let's see here if I can zoom in a little further here. You can see there is a little bit of image noise in here, but I am zoomed into 228%. So that's going to show it off a little bit more. But if you need to, you can always add a little bit of light or strong noise reduction. Strong is going to be for those instances where you're probably shooting at night in really low light. And especially if you had to brighten it with that exposure slider, that's where that strong noise reduction is going to come in.
Excellent. So, excellent. So Andrew, that was a great overview of the core editing tools. I'm going to do some external editing in a second, but I want you to go back just one level to the album. And if you would, just go up a level into your editing album. And I see that you've got two pictures that are similar. Could you go to that one of the sunrise over there?
This one here?
Great. So there's nothing wrong with hitting the auto enhance button, and you can do that right in grid view here without having to go into edit mode. But go ahead and step in and maybe quickly straighten that picture and do something else to it, right?
Yep. So we can grab that crop tool, straighten out our image.
Okay, cool.
Right about there.
Yep. And make one or two more edits that you think would help the picture.
Oh, I like my clarity. So I'm going to bring up the clarity a little bit. And let's pop the vibrance a little bit more.
Okay.
And I'm going to do that strong noise reduction because the auto enhance lightened it up a bit, and I can see, I'm not sure if it's coming across on Zoom, but there is a bit of noise out there. So I'm going to clean that up with the noise reduction.
So now go ahead and hit the copy button.
All right. Copy.
And what can we do with that now?
We can go back to other images and paste those same settings to those photos. So I can hit paste, and huzzah, now I have 2 images that are edited. I can even take those same settings to other images and paste those there. Now, if I really like what that particular set of adjustments is doing, I can go in, click onto an image, and open up this presets category, scroll down to the bottom, and I can choose add. And because I took that auto enhance and I made a few of my own adjustments, if I like my changes better than the auto, I can create my own preset and call it my own, let's see here, quick adjust, and save that so I can use it again on other images later on.
Yeah, and you've got the ability whether or not it includes the straightening and the cropping. Usually you wouldn't include that, but
Right.
if you were quickly cropping and you wanted a preset to crop to 16:9 for like a YouTube thumbnail, you could build that in. So these are very cool. And Angela, you hit on one of the best things, which is that ability to, edit quickly on devices. I use these editing tools all the time on my mobile device because they're non-destructive and they work. I'm going to share my screen, but we made a couple of huge changes to how this actually works now when you're working with editing. And then Angela, you're going to come back with Aaron, who posts all those amazing bird photos in our community. That copy sync, guys, for copy paste edits, that was exactly what I did here, by the way. I showed this earlier in the show where I had one picture. So I'm just right here on the tablet. If I'll say select none for a second to deselect everything, open that up, tap the edit button, no shame in auto, dial in what you're looking for, get it to look really solid. That looks good. And I just want a little hint of more color. And you can dial this in to get your overall feeling. And then it's super simple. I'll just scroll down to the bottom and say copy. That just copies that right to my system. Click the back button. And now you can select the rest of the pictures. If you just press and hold, or you can actually select the range, it becomes very easy to choose a range of pictures. So you could choose what you want there and tap on the pictures or select range. And again, very quickly and easily paste those edits to the group of pictures to reuse them.